Tucker Carlson, renowned for his blunt commentary and unfiltered perspective, was left speechless by a revelation that revealed a deeper, more complex side to Michelle Obama. For many, the former First Lady represents a beacon of grace, intelligence, and public service. Yet Carlson's comments suggest that there might be more to the story than meets the eye. The notion of Michelle Obama as one of the most oppressed people in the world, as suggested by Carlson, came as a shock, as it seemed counter to the public persona she had cultivated over the years. Michelle Obama's assertions, particularly that she was afraid to renew her driver's license and terrified of shopping in an affluent Whole Foods store on Martha's Vineyard, struck Carlson as deeply perplexing. The juxtaposition of her seemingly privileged lifestyle with her self-proclaimed struggles led him to question whether Michelle Obama truly understood the realities that most Americans faced. The revelations didn't stop there. One of the most talked about aspects of Michelle Obama's legacy is her Let's Move initiative, which she launched in 2010 in an effort to reduce childhood obesity across the United States. The program, which initially seemed promising, eventually met with criticism from various quarters. Michelle Obama used her platform as First Lady to spearhead the movement, pushing for healthier school meals, increased physical activity, and improvements in overall dietary habits. Her mission was clear. By changing the way kids eat, move, and live, childhood obesity could be tackled at its roots. She once boldly stated, "If we want to help our kids grow up healthy, we need to change how we eat, how we move, and how we live every single day." Despite her noble intentions, the implementation of the Let's Move initiative didn't go as smoothly as hoped, with numerous challenges emerging almost immediately. One of the primary components of the program was the overhaul of school menus under the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. This act required school lunches to adhere to new nutritional standards, which meant drastically reducing levels of salt, sugar, and saturated fats while introducing more vegetables, fruit, and whole grains. The shift quickly became unpopular, especially with students, many of whom complained about the bland, unappetizing meals. On social media, the hashtag #ThanksMichelleObama began to circulate, showcasing images of unappealing, small-portion meals. For students engaged in sports or requiring higher energy for their active lifestyles, these revamped meals were not only unappealing, they were inadequate. Beyond students' dissatisfaction, the initiative also proved a challenge for many schools, especially those in low-income areas. Providing fresher, less processed foods increased operational costs, placing further financial strain on educational institutions that were already struggling with tight budgets. This also resulted in a significant increase in food waste, as many students simply could not finish their meals. Pictures of discarded school meals, filled with untouched vegetables and uneaten fruit, surfaced frequently, reflecting the program's failure to engage with the realities of school cafeterias and students' actual preferences. Furthermore, despite Michelle Obama's and her team's optimistic forecasts, studies indicated that childhood obesity rates didn't substantially improve, especially not in the short term. Some nutrition experts and critics like Carlson voiced concerns about the program's failure to generate meaningful results, questioning its priorities. Critics also pointed out that focusing too heavily on calorie reduction, without giving much thought to taste or meal variety, led to disengagement. Many of those who initially championed the cause now found themselves disappointed by the lack of significant improvements. Carlson, whose views often lean conservative, was perhaps the most vocal critic of this initiative. He argued that this isn't just about food. This is about freedom. In his view, government interference in what children eat was emblematic of an overreach into personal lives, something that should be determined by parents, schools, and local communities, not a First Lady. He also mocked the effectiveness of the initiative, pointing out that Michelle Obama's idea of a balanced meal, usually some fruit and steamed vegetables, was both insufficient and disconnected from what children required to sustain their growing bodies and minds. He further criticized the substantial costs associated with the program, claiming that millions of taxpayer dollars were being wasted on policies that failed to produce tangible, positive outcomes in the fight against obesity. For Carlson and many others, the initiative represented the very worst of top-down governmental policies that failed to recognize the needs of local families and communities. Despite the lofty intentions of Let's Move, It was clear to many that the initiative had inadvertently created new problems rather than solving old ones. Michelle Obama's role as First Lady, along with her advocacy for public health reform, often intertwined with her personal life and public image, leading to scrutiny that was sometimes difficult to reconcile. Known for her impeccable style and high-end fashion choices, Michelle became a symbol of elegance and grace. But her wardrobe, featuring lavish dresses from world-renowned designers like Jason Wu and Alexander McQueen, quickly became a focal point for criticism. Critics like Carlson pointed to the irony of her representing the working class while wearing expensive gowns worth tens of thousands of dollars. Carlson famously remarked that such extravagant clothing and lifestyle choices stood in stark contrast to the message she often espoused. A $112,000 dress doesn't speak of empathy, he argued. It only proves she's living in a completely different world. Critics saw her fashion choices as indicative of a disconnect from the struggles faced by middle-class Americans, many of whom were working hard just to make ends meet. For some, it seemed difficult to believe that Michelle Obama truly understood the plights of ordinary citizens while enjoying such luxury. It wasn't just about the clothes. Michelle Obama's lifestyle choices during her time in the White House also became targets of criticism. One of the most notable examples was her trip to Spain in 2010. A private vacation where she stayed at an exclusive five-star hotel. While the trip itself was private, the substantial costs associated with her security and transportation raised questions about the appropriateness of such lavish expenditures at a time when many Americans were enduring financial hardship. The vacation was seen by some as a stark display of detachment, especially when juxtaposed with the millions of Americans who were facing job losses and economic struggles during that time. In a broader sense, Carlson argued that Michelle Obama's current lifestyle and image didn't align with the humble beginnings she often spoke about. Having grown up in a working-class family in Chicago, it seemed to Carlson as though her more recent public persona reflected a sense of forgetting her roots. Expensive fashion choices, taxpayer-funded vacations, and her appearance at high-end events created a perception of aloofness, far removed from the reality that many people face every day. She may have spoken about her past, but Carlson and others felt that her actions as First Lady portrayed a woman whose lavish lifestyle didn't reflect the challenges working-class Americans were experiencing. A particularly controversial moment in Michelle Obama's career came during the 2008 campaign when she made a comment that she had never been proud of her country until she saw the possibility of her husband, Barack Obama, running for president. Carlson immediately jumped on this remark, calling it an insult to patriotic Americans. For him, Michelle Obama's statement, later clarified as a reflection of her belief in the potential for positive change under the presidency of her husband, was seen as a damning indication of her lack of genuine pride in the nation that had provided her opportunities. Her explanation, which framed the statement as part of her belief in progress and change, didn't appease her critics. Carlson and others continued to argue that Michelle Obama's words revealed much about her views on America, especially given her unique position at the time as the spouse of the person who was on the verge of becoming the President of the United States. All of these elements, the Let's Move initiative, her public persona, her lifestyle, and her controversial remarks, painted a portrait of Michelle Obama that stirred up heated debates. In the eyes of some, she embodied empowerment and progress for women and minorities, but for critics like Tucker Carlson, she represented a detached elite, removed from the struggles of everyday Americans. Her tenure as First Lady highlighted both the complexities of using personal influence for public good and the complexities of navigating public expectations as a high-profile figure in American society. The story of Michelle Obama is, at the very least, multifaceted, an example of both admiration and skepticism that continues to provoke discussion and challenge perceptions of what it means to be a modern political figure in America. Tucker Carlson's critique of Michelle Obama continued to grow as he examined various aspects of her public persona, focusing on what he believed were contradictions between her actions and the values she purportedly stood for. Among her many memorable phrases, Michelle Obama's famous remark, "When they go low, we go high," earned praise from her supporters, but Carlson seized on it as a prime example of political hypocrisy. Carlson acknowledged the aspirational nature of this slogan but ridiculed its lack of consistency in practice. He argued that, far from embodying grace under pressure, Michelle Obama and her family had, at times, employed ruthless political tactics. He derided the idea that always taking the high road, while not confronting those who go low, was noble. In his view, it was merely a demonstration of weakness, leaving others free to exploit this perceived vulnerability. For Carlson, to take a stance of constant passivity, especially when dealing with political opponents, wasn't an indicator of moral superiority but rather a form of submission. Carlson's harsh critique extended to Michelle Obama's discussion of racial issues. When Michelle spoke about experiencing doubt and discrimination even as First Lady, Carlson found her comments to be overly self-serving and out of touch with the broader public. He expressed disbelief that someone living in the White House, enjoying the privileges and status associated with the highest office in the land, could continue to frame herself as a victim of injustice. In Carlson's view, Michelle's repeated references to pain and discrimination only served to further divide American society. He believed that, rather than helping to unite the country, her rhetoric worsened the growing racial divisions, especially when the progress America had made was overshadowed by constant focus on past grievances. Similarly, Carlson criticized Michelle's comments on women's roles and her belief that women could not have it all. He questioned her intention behind this statement, arguing that rather than encouraging young girls to break barriers, her message conveyed a message of limitation. Carlson believed that her philosophy contradicted the feminist narrative she had long championed. By promoting an image that told young women to accept the limits imposed by society, he contended, she was undermining the very essence of what it means to inspire women to defy boundaries and pursue their dreams. Further criticism came from Carlson regarding Michelle Obama's calls for Black Americans to vote in crucial elections. He believed her emphasis on the Black vote created unnecessary division, pointing out that she specifically focused her messaging on a single demographic group. To Carlson, this approach served to manipulate and exploit this community for political gain rather than advancing the unity of the entire country. Instead of advocating for universal voting participation, Michelle was, in his opinion, playing into partisan politics and undermining any attempt to unite the country as a whole. For him, this divisiveness was the antithesis of what American democracy should stand for. In addition to her political messaging, Carlson also critiqued Michelle Obama's use of her position as First Lady, suggesting that she turned the role into a partisan platform. Traditionally, the First Lady's role was seen as a largely symbolic and non-political one. However, Michelle Obama, according to Carlson, used the platform to further her own personal and political ambitions, blurring the lines of the position's expected neutrality. He believed that Michelle, rather than performing the traditional duties expected of the First Lady, used every opportunity to advance her personal narrative and endorse partisan causes. Carlson argued that this shift in the First Lady's role was both unprecedented and troubling, creating a new and questionable precedent for future holders of the office. What had once been a role characterized by support, unity, and non-political engagement was, in Carlson's view, transformed into one of calculated self-promotion. Carlson also took aim at Michelle Obama's lavish lifestyle, which he saw as contradictory to the public image she sought to project. He frequently highlighted her extravagant choices, such as wearing expensive designer gowns and embarking on costly vacations, which, in his opinion, distanced her from the everyday struggles of the working class. The most notable example he gave was Michelle Obama's $112,000 dress, which Carlson sarcastically argued was hardly the attire of someone who genuinely empathized with average American families living paycheck to paycheck. To Carlson, Michelle's image as a champion of the underprivileged didn't align with the image of a person who spent taxpayer dollars to fund private vacations at five-star hotels. He pointed to her luxurious travel, high-end fashion choices, and extravagant parties as symbols of detachment and elite privilege, rather than symbols of leadership or relatability to the average citizen. Michelle Obama's public statements also came under scrutiny for their potential to exacerbate societal divisions, with Carlson expressing skepticism about whether her leadership efforts really sought to heal the nation or merely served to amplify existing fissures. Her consistent focus on racial inequality, while admirable in intent, became for Carlson an excuse to fuel division rather than foster reconciliation. In his view, Michelle's rhetoric only fanned the flames of polarization, particularly given that she was already part of the establishment and enjoyed immense privilege. She was able to speak about racial inequality from a vantage point of tremendous societal advantage, but in the process, Carlson felt that she became an even more divisive figure, complicating efforts to unite a fractured America. As the criticism of Michelle Obama mounted, Carlson often drew attention to the perceived disconnect between the image she and the mainstream media projected and the reality that he believed lay beneath the surface. Michelle Obama, to her admirers, epitomized progress and social change. She was seen as an example of the modern American woman who had broken barriers and overcome significant challenges to achieve her success. However, to her detractors, she was a deeply polarizing figure who manipulated public opinion and distorted the role of First Lady to serve political purposes. In this way, Carlson saw Michelle not as a perfect public figure, but as someone who had carefully constructed her image to fit a predetermined political narrative, one that exploited both her own story and her position of power for political gain. The portrait that mainstream media painted of Michelle was one of grace, success, and moral high ground. Yet, for those who saw beyond the veneer, she represented something altogether different. A politically savvy individual who knew how to wield her role for maximum benefit. Carlson's criticism extended to her husband's rise to power as well, suggesting that Barack Obama's success was anything but the result of sheer talent or coincidence. He posited that Obama's career path was a direct result of powerful backroom forces that had orchestrated his political ascent for years. According to Carlson, Obama was not the product of the people's will, but rather a creation of the political establishment, a man whose rise to fame had been meticulously crafted and staged for public consumption. His keynote speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention became the linchpin of the narrative, instantly making Obama a household name in a matter of hours. Carlson saw this as part of a much broader strategic campaign to portray Obama as a symbol of hope and renewal, when in reality it was part of a carefully calculated media campaign. Carlson remembered his first meeting with Obama as an unremarkable encounter with a man who hardly appeared to be destined for greatness. Yet, after his DNC speech, Obama skyrocketed to national prominence. Carlson suggested that the speech and its dramatic impact were no accident. It had been scripted from the very beginning as part of a larger narrative constructed to position Obama as a messianic figure, a man who had overcome adversity to claim a place on the world stage. The mainstream media, Carlson argued, played a critical role in inflating Obama's public persona, turning him into a political hero while the public was largely oblivious to the meticulous planning that had gone into creating his image. Ultimately, Carlson's skepticism about Obama's political rise raised critical questions about modern American politics, about how public figures are crafted, marketed, and sold to the electorate. With his commentary on Barack Obama's rise, Carlson contended that the story of Obama's political ascent was far more about image building and behind-the-scenes power structures than about any singular personal achievement. He raised the key question: is Obama truly a leader of the people, or is he merely the product of the most significant media-driven political campaign in history? Tucker Carlson's comprehensive analysis of Barack Obama's political career and messaging provides a striking examination of the role political strategy, media, and propaganda play in shaping public perception. Throughout Obama's career, he skillfully employed his talent as an orator not just to inspire, but to strategically position himself as a unifying figure amidst a fractured America. From his meteoric rise in 2004 after his keynote speech at the Democratic National Convention, where he was an obscure Illinois state senator with no federal experience, Obama captured the nation's attention almost overnight. Carlson pointed out that this instant fame didn't happen by accident, but was part of a broader, highly calculated strategy that was years in the making. The powerful networks behind Obama's rise saw a unique opportunity to craft a politician whose narrative resonated deeply with the American people, a symbol of change, hope, and unity. Carlson critically scrutinized Obama's iconic 2008 presidential campaign, which centered around messages of unity and overcoming partisan divisions. The speech, especially Obama's famous line, "We are not a red America or a blue America. We are the United States of America," provided the language of hope and reconciliation. While the speech ignited widespread enthusiasm, Carlson cautioned that such ideals, though powerful, lacked tangible policy substance. In the face of mounting divisions in American politics, Obama's message of unity was increasingly challenged by complex social and cultural realities. As Obama entered office and the early promises of change began to clash with the harsh realities of governance, Carlson observed a significant shift in Obama's political messaging. The president, who had once captivated the country with his calls for bipartisan cooperation, was increasingly shaped by the pressures of cultural and social divisions. As Carlson explained, Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, which leaned heavily on mobilizing specific cultural and identity-based groups, marked a sharp departure from the unifying rhetoric of 2008. Carlson argued that this strategic pivot was not accidental, but a deliberate effort by Obama and his advisors to address the changing political climate. With movements like the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street challenging power structures and the role of government, Obama's messaging had to evolve. Instead of focusing on the broader vision of a united America, Obama adapted by appealing to specific voter blocs based on race, class, and identity, a shift Carlson attributed to the strategic advice from his political advisors and major interest groups. As the economic recovery stalled and his initial promises of change were left unfulfilled, Obama adopted a more divisive approach, appealing to cultural battlegrounds rather than unified national discourse. According to Carlson, these decisions weren't a result of Obama's personal ideals alone but stemmed from the complex interplay of various political forces seeking to influence the direction of his presidency. One of the significant shifts in Obama's strategic approach came in how he and his advisors restructured the language around his political persona, highlighting the use of terms like woke, a politically charged term that embodied the shift towards greater identity-based politics. In Carlson's eyes, these shifts were calculated steps by Obama's team to reshape how American politics was understood, going beyond policy debates and into the realm of shaping perceptions and cultural realities. With an increased reliance on digital platforms and advanced data analytics, modern political campaigns became vehicles for controlling narratives on an unprecedented scale. In Obama's case, the strategic use of the media not only amplified his message but framed the narrative in a way that allowed him to dictate not just what the public thought, but how they felt. Carlson noted that media today doesn't just report events. It actively structures the public's understanding of these events, making it a crucial tool in the management of political careers. Political narratives, like Obama's rise from humble beginnings to becoming the first African-American president, were part of a meticulously orchestrated narrative construction, manipulated to ensure its emotional resonance with the public. Beyond Obama's particular approach, Carlson viewed this shift in political messaging as part of a broader change in the way political campaigns are run in modern America. Campaigns, once primarily about policy, had transformed into high-stakes media strategies where controlling public perception became a critical component of political success. The use of advanced technology and vast amounts of data allowed for precision targeting of messages, ensuring they resonated with the right groups at the right time. Media outlets, while purportedly offering objective reports on political events, were co-opted into creating a one-dimensional version of political figures, polishing their images, and spinning every policy initiative as a part of a larger societal evolution. According to Carlson, these tactics aren't just confined to Barack Obama but are a symptom of a much larger shift within American democracy, where the boundaries between media and politics blur, resulting in the increasing distrust among the public towards institutions and politicians. Carlson's critique also extended to the role propaganda played in shaping the Obama presidency. Drawing parallels between the media strategies used by Obama and the tactics of historical figures like Joseph Goebbels, he highlighted the power of controlling the narrative over controlling actual material power. Propaganda, Carlson claimed, was leveraged to craft and promote favorable narratives, especially those surrounding Obama's political achievements. Meanwhile, dissenting opinions and alternative viewpoints were muted or framed as less significant. Carlson also critiqued how this kind of manipulation reduced public discourse to a narrow set of preconstructed narratives, often built around political labels like insurrection or unity, without any deep engagement or reflection on the realities behind them. The event of January 6th, for example, was used as a convenient rallying cry for a polarized political narrative, often employed in ways that suppressed real political conversation about the country's pressing issues. Yet Carlson didn't entirely condemn the media's power or the politics of persuasion. Instead, he suggested that the rise of new media and increased connectivity had created a new era of transparency. Where once propaganda thrived under the weight of limited information access, today's citizens are more empowered with information and have the means to critically assess the political narratives they are fed. The awakening of public awareness surrounding issues of media manipulation, although still in early stages, has prompted discussions on restoring a more open, transparent political system. Carlson argued that as more people realize the extent of media's role in shaping political outcomes, it is no longer an invisible force. It is now an area of public scrutiny. He believed this growing awareness presents a potential turning point in American society where future leaders must operate not only under the watchful gaze of the public, but also through more open and honest conversations about power structures. Despite this shift towards a more informed society, Carlson raised the critical question of whether the current fractures within American society, fueled by decades of hyperpartisanship and identity-driven political campaigns, could be healed. He cautioned that, even with heightened awareness, these societal rifts may prove too deep to bridge, and that real solutions would require more than just transparency or shifting the narrative. Instead, he stressed the need for a collective effort to reconnect the public with their shared challenges and work together to rebuild trust. Carlson's reflections revealed his belief that the future of American politics lies in a more engaged and discerning electorate, one that can confront the propaganda of the past and push for a future based on genuine dialogue. As his video concluded, Carlson urged his viewers to engage actively in these vital conversations, suggesting that, perhaps, only through collective action can America overcome its political divisions and reassert a meaningful sense of unity.